After I'd finished servicing both of my aircraft, I wanted to take advantage of the extended period of fine weather to make a quick flight up to the UK and back, leaving Thursday the 15th of August and flying back on the following Sunday. But then the fine weather promptly broke, and I was unable to leave for 3 days, due either to high winds in northern France and over the Channel, or low cloud at Malbec preventing me from taking off. But then a small weather window presented itself from Sunday the 18th of August through until Wednesday the 21st. Even so, although I was ready to go at my planned time of 8 o'clock on Sunday morning, low cloud prevented me from taking off until 10:10, and the low cloud stayed with me for the whole route right way up to the north of France. Take-off at Malbec past the chateau was normal, except as I hadn't flown the Savannah since its engine service, I turned right early towards open ground, just in case there was any problem. But there wasn't, and although I couldn't climb very much due to the low cloud base, I continued my right turn, but keeping clear of the commune of Florac itself. Due to the cloud, I couldn't get any higher than about 1,000 feet or so above the surface as I continued my turn towards the Chateau de Florac, and it eventually passed below the aircraft. After passing the chateau, a small leftward course correction was necessary to get me onto the right track that would take me first to Poitiers and eventually to Saumur. It also took me directly towards Rouffignac. With the road from Florac to Rouffignac on my right, I first passed the little pallet factory and then Le Camping La Nouvelle Creuse, which I'd never noticed before. It's much smaller than I originally thought. When you drive the road from Florac to Rouffignac, you get the impression that the land is quite flat, but it's only from the air that you see it's actually quite rolling, with lots of small valleys in between. Approaching Rouffignac itself, the house of my friends Wim and Sophie passed under the left wing. Followed by the fire station, the Bricogem hardware store, and the little Carrefour supermarket with its car park half full of visiting tourist cars. Then Rouffegnac's main street, with its tall white Mary set off to one side, overlooking the valley, followed by the middle school and its playing fields. As the buildings began to peter out, the road to Périgueux went off on an angle to my left, and I continued northwards on a track that would eventually take me to Poitiers. More than 2 hours after leaving Malbec, I was approaching Saumur, over 20 minutes later than I'd anticipated. I decided that I would join wide left-hand downwind for runway 28 as soon as I had the airfield in sight, as I could hear on the radio that there was activity there, but I couldn't tell what. right-hand turn therefore took me parallel to the runway and flying in the direction of Saumur itself. I wanted to allow plenty of space for other traffic, but as I would be announcing my position at every stage of my approach and landing, other traffic would be fully aware of what I was doing anyway. I didn't want to fly a wider circuit than was necessary though, and I also needed to take into account the fact that I'd be landing with quite a strong gusting crosswind from the right. I also needed to remain high enough above buildings on the ground, but not so high that I'd end up diving through the runway with too fast a landing speed. The last time that I flew this approach was almost exactly 8 years ago, and the conditions were almost the same then too. Saumur is almost wholly located on the southern bank of the River Loire, and it has a large chateau constructed out of the local white stone, standing prominently on an elevated position not far from the river. The downwind leg was taking me towards the centre of the city and the chateau, and as I flew on, the views became more and more spectacular. The city could only have looked more striking if the dull grey skies had parted and the sun had come out, but it was not to be. The time came for a descending turn onto a sort of crooked base leg, but on an angle to avoid overflying too many buildings. This took me more or less along the line of a little river or stream that was heading down to join the River Loire somewhere further ahead in the distance. Then it was time to turn final, but for an indirect approach, so as to be sure of flying over the minimum possible number of residential buildings and houses. While I was descending towards the runway, a couple of parachuters descended into view, and if you look carefully, they are visible in the upper left quadrant of the screen. As a result, I decided to land long so as to clear the drop zone as soon as possible, and after a not too challenging crosswind landing, I taxied off the runway and round to the fuel point in the apron parking area. What I'd estimated would be a 2-hour flight had actually taken nearly 2.5 hours, and as the headwind component had been quite a lot larger than I'd anticipated, I had to take on more fuel than I'd originally calculated. After signing in and making use of the toilet facilities in the Aero Club, I then wanted to depart as quickly as possible to head north. As I taxied out, I could easily have taken off downwind from the taxiway, but that would not have been a proper thing to do. So instead I taxied the whole way down to the holding point for runway 28 and took off in the opposite direction to that which I wanted to go. I would have then preferred to have turned right, but this is discouraged as there's an equine training establishment close to the airfield on that side. Instead I turned left to depart from the airfield's overhead. I then turned north to head for Le Mans, and if I'd hoped for better weather conditions, I would be disappointed. Instead I got more low cloud with some rain, and even stronger winds the closer I approached the Channel coast. But I achieved my objective and got up to and back from the UK and was able to see my new granddaughter for the very first time. That made it all worth it.